knows my awful real personality now.
In this episode, we are going to talk about the concept of trust and also the fearful attachment, which one might also call disorganized attachment.
Yeah, I'm excited about that one. I know a lot of people have been asking about it. They feel like the forgotten group. And I think that makes sense, right? Because that was historic as well. Like, when you look at the strange situation where they studied kids and their attachment styles, they started to classify these groups. You know, they had the anxious kids, they had the avoidant kids. And when I think about that, I like to think about, like, imagine if these kids had like a ball of energy in their chest, right? The anxious kids, when they got dysregulated, this ball got bigger and they decided to amplify it to their environment. And they got regulation by their caretakers by doing that. The avoiding kids, they made this ball smaller and said, I don't need help. I can take care of this myself. So they got really good at that. But when I think about the fearful, disorganized kids, I imagine that they had a ball that was too big to begin with. And that ball, because of what they've experienced, they didn't have the luxury to express it, because expressing it and trying to get regulation that way was 100% uncomfortable. Like, it truly did not feel good. Whereas for the anxious kids, it might have felt actually quite relieving to release the emotion. So on one end, you have a atomic bomb rather than a hand grenade that you need to express. But then on the other end, they also don't have the luxury of the avoidantly attached kids who can minimize it, because it's harder to suppress an atomic bomb than it is a firecracker, you know? And so the study, they found that the fearfully attached kids, or the disorganized attached kids, they were so inconsistent in their behaviors because of this, that there's not a ton of research. You know, some of the kids would lean more like anxious in how they would act. Some would freeze, some would fawn, all sorts of stuff. But I think that's part of the reason why the disorganized attachment is the forgotten group. It's because they don't have the luxury to just be one way.
Mm-hmm. And to bring it into like adulthood, I think someone with fearful attachment is going to be more likely to, not have close connections, not have close friends, avoidant of romantic relationships, specifically because they're fearful not only of their relationship to other people, but just other people in general. They are, at their core, they just do not trust that other people are safe, and therefore they can't enter into the inner circle of the fearfully attached person's life. And I think the biggest tragedy of someone who has fearful attachment is if they never kind of work on that, because they kind of spend their whole life feeling this solitary kind of aloneness, this loneliness, that they think is unavoidable, but it's only because they have yet to understand kind of the root of it, which is vulnerability has not necessarily been received well in your past. And so of course you're not going to express it in your present. And one more thing. I feel like the best depiction, I wish we can maybe I will edit this into the video, but the best depiction of fearful attachment and healing fearful attachment is there's this kitten. There's this video of this kitten in this cage, and it's very like get away. Like, it's literally doing this with its paws, right? And this foster mother cat was introduced into this cage. And there's this time-lapse video of the kitten going get the hell away from me. Do not come near me. And the mother kitten is just staying in the cage next to it, but giving it its space, but also not leaving, right? And you could see over time, the kitten slowly kind of stops lashing out, and then slowly starts kind of getting closer to the mother cat. And you could see the security develop in real time. And I think that's a perfect illustration of healing fearful attachment, because it kind of shows that if you can find a person in your life that can maybe withstand that discomfort that you feel and stick around and be an unconditional source of support, it will then kind of change your brain chemistry of people equals danger. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I mean, people with fearful attachment, I think that's why they can be sometimes the most like enjoyable people to be around, because initially there might be this wall of lack of trust that keeps people at arm's length, but it's protecting sort of like this wonderful vulnerability that was so discouraged in childhood. And a lot of times I think that whether it's because of the trauma experiences or biodiversity or whatever, but a lot of times people with a fearful attachment have bigger emotions, you know, that they are managing. And so whenever they are in a negative space, it can look like this very dysregulated cat, like you described, like someone that's clawing and trying to make themselves safe, and it can be very explosive. A lot of kids with fearful attachment, they scream if they bump into something that kind of hurts their arm because it makes them think of being hit physically or something like that. And the surrounding now wants to nothing to do with this kid, right? But the moment that that kid is truly embraced over and over and over again in a relationship, now it goes back to the raw materials that was once before, which is this big energy. And energy and emotions are just technically the things that make things move, right? And so now you are sometimes the most special people in society that can be the savants, the people that can work hard and do all sorts of things in some niche area, right? Like, and I imagine that to be the case when it comes to people that are fearfully attached. Once they're their most comfortable, they can be sometimes the most fun people, you know?
They're kind of like a diamond, you know, like there's tons of pressure and it creates something really unique. But at the same time, it's a very precarious process of developing that sense of self, and it can crumble at any moment. You know, they can crack under the pressure and often do. And it's, you know, something you said a couple episodes ago about fearful attachment, which I think really rings true is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but people with fearful attachment, they almost begrudgingly accept the fact that they need people, but really hate the fact that they need people. Like the difference between someone who is fearfully attached and someone who is avoidantly attached is the avoidantly attached person really is much more, in some ways, content with the distance. But a fearfully attached person is not necessarily content with the distance, but they also just don't see how closeness can work for them. You know, like they don't have a path to closeness in their head just yet.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. Yeah, because I mean, another difference between avoidant attachment and disorganized or fearful attachment is the like the deeper part of trust, right? Like avoidant attachers, they don't trust people that quickly, right? They don't, but they long for that to happen down the line. Like I want these walls of my life. I want to make sure that I wake up at this time every day. I want to make sure that everything in my life is sort of this box that I know exactly what to predict, because for the avoidant type, familiarity means safety. But I think the difference with disorganized attachment or with fearful attachment, familiarity does not mean safety as much as it does for the other attachment styles. So now structure, rules, and all of that stuff can feel like threats rather than sources of protection. So a lot of kids with fearful attachment, for example, they love games, but they love games with no rules. If there's winners and losers and you say, hey, you can't do that, now suddenly there's a loud scream. Because with fearful attachment, I think it's this fear of being controlled at a deeper level than the other attachment styles. And so a part of healing fearful attachment, I think, is as you start to build trust, noticing some of the positive aspects of the rules, because those are the things that can sort of direct you in a way that conforms to society, a society that once hurt you, but now learning to speak their language. I mean, one of the coolest parts I learned when working with kids was that the if you want to work with someone who's dealing with fearful attachment really early, if you give them some strategies of how to avoid pain from their peers, they'll do that really quickly because they don't want their peers to have power to reject them and things like that, you know. But I know every fearful person is different, but that's one of the things I picked up.
That's interesting. Like so what you're saying is like a fearfully attached person, they're like anticipating being controlled by others. Is
Yeah,
is that ring true?
I think so. Yeah, it's like this anticipation of being controlled and then finding more freedom when the rules are gone, because now there's not this whip about to hit their hand if they do something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for other styles, it can feel more like anxious, for example. You go too far in that direction, like please direct me to do exactly what society needs me to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I
What are
think
the rules?
What are the
Yeah,
rules?
give
How
me
do I
them.
meet those rules? If I have anxious attachment ADHD, I'm like, all right, wait a minute. Like, how do I act? How can I imitate every other creature here? But with fearful attachment, I think you don't have the luxury so much of doing that early on. And you also feel like, well, if I do, then this game now is no longer fun,
Mm-hmm.
and I almost just picture, I don't know this for certain, but I imagine that people with fearful attachment enjoy more imaginative play because now they don't have to be attacked by the society that's placing rules on things that hurt them before,
Mm-hmm. And in a lot of ways, I feel like anxious and avoidant attachment are in a separate category than fearful attachment because anxious and avoidant attachment are both like they're both solutions that help you. Uh, how do I formulate my thought? Anxious and avoidant attachment are both solutions to the problem of how do I relate to people, right?
Hmm.
That's like the mental gymnastics that those two attachment styles do. But fearful attachment is more of a resignation that I cannot and will not relate to people despite the fact that I probably need to. And that's like it's almost like taking yourself out of the game itself.
Yes, I'm not playing this game anymore. Yeah, the score is 40-60.
I can't win this game.
Yeah.
Whereas an anxiously attached person or an avoidantly attached person deep down still feel like they can win the game. I mean, they
Hmm.
both fail miserably because for many reasons that we've already discussed, but the fearfully attached person doesn't want to participate.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes fearfully attached people so stimulating because they can think out the box.
Uh-huh.
Because they had to, you know. The game is, I don't want to keep playing because I don't see a way to win. But I also think that it's, one, really difficult to even come to terms with that. But two, there's a really big truth about that society's boxes were created by sometimes people who weren't the best informed people. So
Mhm.
there's a benefit to going around the box and developing your own skills. I think one of the hardest, not the hardest parts, but a difficult part about fearful attachment is that you do have skills that's, unorthodox because you don't like to be controlled by the norms of society, but also you miss out on some of the more socially acceptable skills that most people learn through this process because you've resigned to doing things your own way.
Mhm.
And so now that you are resigning away from those things, you don't get as many positive experiences that often come by going with the norm. So as you do things with the norm, and let's say you have an authority figure that's like, okay, well, let me try to make you do things this way because I know that through the test of time, this is going to lead to positive outcomes. The fearful kid not only is afraid that they are going to get rejected by the people around them, but they're afraid that they're going to let themselves down because they're like, I've seen my hands try to do something like this, and I've had the outcome ripped away from me so much because I just can't do it. And it's because, oh, well, those skills weren't as developed as the people that are the same age peers, maybe.
Mhm. 100%. And as someone who relates to this topic, I think there was a period of my life where I chose not to participate. And in your minds, you're not really making that choice. It's kind of passively happening to you.
Mhm.
But when you start to experience the effects of not participating, you kind of see life passing you by. You know, all of these and like you said, you kind of have to come to understand every way in which life works on your own. Like, okay, if I'm gonna start drinking alcohol, I don't want to do it because everyone else is do it. I need to get there myself. And if I can't get there myself, I'm not going to participate in this social activity. You know, you almost have to reinvent everything, you know? Like I have to invent every single thing that exists in this world, every single role, every single responsibility. I have to get there myself because I don't trust the the ways in which the world has imposed ideas onto me.
Yeah. I mean, I hadn't thought about it like that in that way, like got chills that you said that. But
Really?
yeah, like
I was like, I'm not sure if what I was saying is landing.
no, definitely, because it just made me think about like the creativity and the like. There intuitively, I just always felt like people with more fearful attachment and disorganized attachment, they can be more, um, I guess, out of the box, unorthodox, and all that, and creative. But I never thought about the why being that. Well, you've learned to do things your own way. And of course, that's going to be awesome, but different, you know?
It's also alienating,
Hmm.
uh, me trying to navigate my first semester of my PhD my own way led to me quickly abandoning that approach because and the truth is like I was able to do things my own way all the way up to a first semester of a PhD program. So I got pretty far doing it my way, and then life punched me in the face and I had to adjust. And I think the same applies for lots of areas of people's lives where it works until it doesn't work. And when it stops working, you're kind of left feeling helpless of like, what am I supposed to do? This is the only way I know how to do things. I mean, like even this, I taught myself certain statistics so that I can do my dissertation, but it's like every fucking time, every path has to be the hardest one. And at some point you just burn yourself out approaching life that way. And the truth is like it's rooted in this lack of trust. I think fearful attachment at its core is a mistrust in others, right? So, but I think this whole concept of trust in relationships is it's usually warped by our mind and our ego. So like I feel like our idea of trust in relationship is like, hey, you're not gonna hurt me, right? And it's like, no, I'm not. It's like, great, there's trust. But the reality is trust very much more looks like, hey, here's a knife, please don't stab me.
It's an experimentation process.
Uh-huh.
It's not something that you can make safe based on just willing it that way.
Like, hey, here's the keys to my house.
Mm-hmm.
Please do not rob me. You know what I mean? Like,
that's what it is.
And I'm picking you, and hopefully the people. Real trust has to be rooted in reality. So pick people who you genuinely are willing to give keys to because you think they won't rob you. But there is no fix to the uncertainty that still comes with they still might. You have no control over that aspect.
I think so. And trust being a huge part with like I think about trust and self-trust, you know? Like I feel like a lot of people with fearful attachment have to be truly trusting of themselves in the world where they don't trust other people. Because now that's sort of your go-to. So like I think like even just when we're talking, right? Like you are brutally honest with yourself.
Am I?
And I think so. I think you have a brutal honesty with yourself, and not
I need
brutal
to
in
be
a
less
bad way.
brutal.
Not in a bad way. Like
I'm
brutal,
trying to be kinder to myself.
like I mean,
No,
more
I'll
so-
take it
you're
as a
just messing.
compliment.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
take it
take it as a compliment. I'm trying to make you take it as a compliment. like this kind of like right, like
Yeah,
we analyze the raw data. I know hopefully a lot of psychologists do that, but with fearful attachment, you don't have the luxury of not being honest with yourself because the stakes are far higher. If you're in a world where you're hoping to trust people and you see people that are operating more on bias, you know the stakes of being on the other end of that because you've operated with early attachment figures that operate based on bias and lack of truth, and that's hurt you. And so when people with fearful attachment are more concerned about reading between the lines and people are just like, why can't you just kind of relax and let people just fluff sometimes? Why can't you just let them go with the flow? It's because if that happens with fearful attachment, one, your emotions that are bigger are going to be dealing with this uncertainty in the world. And then two, you've been hurt extremely when that doesn't happen. And so as you're navigating the world and trying to build success, the only way that you can truly do that is if people aren't just fluffing and they're being honest and authentic with you. And so then a lot of people with fearful attachment are so honest with themselves. It's incredible. You don't have the luxury of not being honest with yourself.
Well, I think you're right, and I think it's rooted in, especially when you're younger, feeling like you're almost like a ship with no GPS, and the only thing left you have is your mild history of star positions. Like you're really by yourself in a dark ocean. And the only thing you have is your gut telling you which direction to go. And so that ability becomes refined over time. And in adulthood, it becomes kind of a superpower. But, at the same time, it's still this muscle that has become overworked because you felt like you needed it. But when you start to build relationships with other people, hopefully that kind of eases the pressure of feeling like you are the only person navigating the ship, because it's a heavy responsibility to feel like, I'm the only thing keeping this thing from capsizing.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. No, that makes sense.
But also I just feel like people with fearful attachment, and I also just think like the caveat is like we use words to describe psychological phenomena, but like you don't have to be, there's no such thing as like a clean fearful attachment. Like you can have maybe you can relate to some of this and not all of this, and I think the point is these things we're describing are ways in which our mind tries to mediate some uncertainty in our life.
Yeah.
And so maybe you lean towards anxious attachment, but maybe there's a part of you that also relates to the fearful side of things. And it's not like a one or the other. It's a spectrum, and they're all kind of related in some way because there's a sense of insecurity at the root of all of them.
Yeah, and I mean, I've heard one person on TikTok say it, but there's like cats and dogs, and the offspring of those cats and dogs. And with fearful attachment, unlike anxious and avoidant, it's more like you can be like a like 75% cat, 25% dog, or something. Like there's so many different complex pictures with it, but you can always learn secure attachment like things. Like I think healing any attachment wound, you're hopefully in a space with someone who can see past the defenses, like you said, like at the beginning, and be able to show you that unconditional positive regard that I see behind your skin, and I hope to. And as I'm seeing behind your skin, I like what I see, and I want to be a part of that, And I don't think a lot of fearful kids get that a lot because there's so many barriers to that. If your emotions are reactive as a kid because you've had to protect yourself, same age peers aren't going to vibe with that, And then if you resign to outside world behavior, then you're going to be isolated in that way too. But you can find a way, and there's just so much good work that can be done through the secure attachment, right?
Yeah, and I think like the start, if you have fearful attachment and you want to heal from it, the start is not looking at the desire for connection as a problem in your life, but instead as something that is driving you towards growth if you let it. Like how you get there is a different conversation, but the fact that there's this thing that's kind of dim in you but present, and no matter what you do, you can't extinguish it because inherently we're social animals and we like connection, then I would argue stop treating it like a problem and start looking at it as kind of a pointer in the direction of where you need to do your work.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly because I think healing fearful attachment looks like pure vulnerability and connection in safe spaces. Because the more dysregulated you are, it's likely the more isolated you are. Because the more isolated you are, the more intense your emotions get, and the more they turn into an echo chamber that bring out the negative symptoms of your emotions rather than the good gifts they were supposed to give. So if you're isolated and resigned from society, like a lot of fearfully attached people are, you are alone. And then the moment that you get out with other people, your emotions have far less accuracy. Your anger that was supposed to be an assertive, I want this, is now punching the air in the wall. It's not accurate. So the more that you lean towards connection and receive validation, the more your emotions level out. And then the more that people are going to find that your big emotions are actually a huge gift, and you start to find that connection is good. But the more you resign away from connection, the more that you start to sort of exacerbate the symptoms of your own fearful attachment, and hopefully you find some secure people to connect with,
I think that's the key. The key word is they have to feel safe. Otherwise, you're just kind of walking into confirmation of the thing you feared, which is people are crappy. And I mean, what are some what do you think are some common beliefs of someone with fearful attachment about relationships?
Well, I mean, I'd like that what you said too, right? Like those beliefs are true oftentimes, that people will, misunderstand me. Maybe that's a big belief of fearful attachment. I'll be misunderstood even though I have to act this way. Like I think that's also probably the reason why people with fearful attachment might really relate to and understand people with BPD, because it's like, what it's like to be misunderstood. And then what it's like to be in a room with a therapist that is just giving you jargon, and then to be judged by the majority group in the opinion of the majority group to matter more than your opinion, when in reality you were right all along, that you're feeling something that's very real. So I think a lot of times people with fearful attachment are invalidated because they're experiencing real emotions that are just different than the society, and they're told. So then you tell a fearfully attached person, like, go be vulnerable with society. And they're like, okay. And then they go and they're like, yeah, I got rejected, you know?
Mm-hmm. So, look at what you did to me. Now I'm
Mm-hmm.
rejected. It's interesting. I don't know the research on this, but I'd be interested to look into the connection between fearful attachment and BPD, because I do think that someone with borderline personality disorder probably is more likely to have a fearful attachment style, because over time they've learned that they can't maintain relationships. And so the the idea that anyone can be safe is over time kind of disputed based on their experiences. Like, no, no one's safe. Look at what happens to all of my relationships. I can't rely on anyone. And oftentimes someone with BPD, either they go from like friend group to friend group, or as they get older, just kind of give up on trying to connect with people, despite the fact that they want to connect with people.
Yes, and that goes back because with fearful attachment, the issue is trust, right? Like with fearful attachment, you are one of the people that are most exposed to the worst of society. Because if you had more secure attachment, you would be more welcomed by your peers and you would see the best of society because now people are smiling at you when they see you. But with fearful attachment, because you're so different, which is not your fault, society will respond to you in a way that pushes you away.
Hmm.
And so now people in your mind, the core belief is that human beings are inherently bad until you show them something superficial. And that's a real thing because it's not that that doesn't exist. It's just that that is the far left of humanity, that and that is the only thing that you see because that's the most novel to you because that's what you've experienced over and over again. And so yeah, with fearful attachment, you are truly fighting against a real issue with humanity, right?
Yeah.
That people aren't willing to face.
And I think that that's probably why people with fearful attachment are more likely to develop social anxiety, because this idea that, you know, the only way I can exist in the social world is by putting on a performance. Maybe they'll attempt every once in a while to put on that performance, but ultimately they just look at that whole experience as exhausting and frustrating and a waste of time, and over time start to retreat and spends less interacting with others, and basically become isolated and lonely, you know? So I think people with a mistrust of others, it's like, and also like we didn't really talk about it, but like the origin of the mistrust in others is I imagine there are early childhood experiences of attempts to be vulnerable, attempts to connect through showing your uniqueness, and it was met with either neglect or criticism or judgments. And what is the message that someone who develops fearful attachment hears? The message is, you know, being yourself is going to show people your inadequacy, and so hide yourself from others, and therefore probably don't connect as much with them either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hide yourself because you don't experience secure attachment with a lot of people because you've experienced the worst of it. And
And and there's something about you that's causing it. I think
yeah,
there's
yeah.
I feel like the identity piece of fearful attachment is unique compared to anxious and avoidant attachment, in the
Mm.
sense of like someone with fearful attachment, I don't think they dislike themselves. I think that they are frustrated with the fact that society doesn't like them.
Yeah, I get that vibe a lot too. I mean, with fearful attachment, I think it's also like the identity piece being authenticity is huge, right? Because if you have fearful attachment, you don't get the same wiring as like the people that are more anxious or avoidant. Not to say that's the right way, but I think with um, people who aren't fearfully attached, you get so many experiences that wire the reptilian part of yourself that learns based on experience to act in a way that's social norm. So for people that are neurotypical and all that, you are sort of habitually just operating with people in a way that people expect. But with fearful attachment, because of this unorthodox way of life, your natural self at baseline in your authentic self does not line up as often with most other people.
Your existence is subversive, you know?
Yeah, your existence is subversive. So subversive. So when you exist with other people as your genuine, authentic self, that's when you're supposed to get the most positive consequences, but that's when you get the most negative consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, of course, you walk away with the belief that the problem isn't necessarily all me. It's society.
It's them.
It's them. You know, it's true absence of trust. Where at least with avoidant attachment, you feel a sense of trust and like, well, if I abide by these rules, people better respect me.
Mm-hmm.
Versus with fearful attachment, it's like those rules suck too. You know, I don't trust those either.
There's like a couple of thoughts I'm having. There's a great movie called Into the Wild, and it's about this guy who like had this dream of going into the Alaskan wilderness, and he was very much into like kind of the romantic kind of authors, like Henry David Thoreau, like really all about solitude. And he like went into the Alaskan. He eventually died from eating poisonous plants in Alaska. But it's the story of a guy who I would argue has this fearful attachment and looks upon the world as not inhabitable for someone like him. You know, there's literally scenes of him kind of watching his alter ego kind of exist in the corporate rat race, and he's just looking at it in his head and going, I don't want that, you know. And so you feel very alone and alienated, and you kind of wander through life wanting connection, but also not knowing how to get it and not feeling like you have the parts to get it. And that movie, he eventually kind of made all of these transient connections with people, but when he was dying, he had this realization, at least in the movie, that, you know, happiness is only real when it's shared. And he had spent so much time alone that he kind of missed the boat in understanding like the fact that he actually was really capable of making these very deep connections. But I think this is a message that I think fearfully attached people need to understand. You're looking at the world and you're looking at all these people connecting and you're going, man, like, why can't I do that, right? But I would argue what you're looking at is the image of connection. A lot of people are not connecting. A lot of relationships, a lot of marriages are of people who have no connection with each other. So your standard of what relationships look like is very reasonable, but it's also high and therefore hard to attain. Not impossible to attain, but when you look at the world and you think everyone is deeply connected with each other, that's an illusion. And the things that you seek are difficult to find, but the fact that you haven't found it yet doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It just means that you understand really what matters and that things that matter are very hard to identify, you know?
Yeah. I mean, with fearful attachment, I think once you start healing, you develop the purest form of secure attachment, because it's not secure attachment built on social norms. It's not secure attachment built on I developed and made everybody like me. It's this you're coming from this place of there was no glue that attached me to other people, and yet now I can see underneath all the layers. Because with the fearful attachment, you're sort of forced to look beneath the layers of all human beings in order to connect with them. So it's like there's secure attachment with all sorts of other people, but you know, I think a big difference is when you don't have fearful attachment as a start, there's a greater chance that there's going to be a lot more fluff in your relationships and things that you're abiding by. And there's going to be a lot more times where if you are someone who's like anxiously attached, that's now secure, that like, oh, we violated this social norm. Now I need to talk to my wife about this and I don't know if we're okay. Versus with fearful attachment and secure, like that is the farthest thing from my mind that you burped in public. like I think there's this understanding of what's truly real with fearful attachment, what's truly not real. What's an issue versus what's a non-issue.
Mm-hmm.
And with other attachment styles, it's like you can get confused because you've participated so long in this very mind-numbing society of like what's real issues that aren't issues at all when it comes to actual human being connection. You know?
And that's the thing. Like a fearfully attached person probably has a better understanding of reality. They're just not sharing it with anyone to affirm that belief. And that's why I think a lot of and this is why I was drawn to it, but I think a lot of stand-up comedians are actually fearfully attached. They have this kind of love-hate relationship with the crowd, with attention, with an audience, because there's a part of them that needs that affirmation, and there's a part of them that really hates the fact that they're reliant on other people.
Wow.
And so what you find with stand-up comedians often is this neediness for others, while simultaneously really frustrated with the fact that they have that in them. And at the same time, I think like fearfully attached people have this kind of rawness to them. And there's nothing more raw in terms of an artistic medium than someone standing with nothing behind them but a stool and trying to evoke something involuntary out of you like laughter with just their words. It's the rawest experience you have. And just to build off of that thought too, like I know that part of the way I navigated life, especially early on, was I had to come to understand something completely on my own. Like I needed to ask a million questions. Um, like, like when I jump into a new hobby, I will know nothing about it, but jump 2 feet in and experience lots of problems because I have no preparation for what I'm doing. And it's very frustrating, but I also get to understand every little hiccup that this hobby has. I will learn in real time what that is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Every single problem that a person in this world experiences, I will experience myself.
Because you're new to everything, you have to learn to deal with things on the fly and adapt to it in that way, right?
100%. It gives you confidence in your ability to learn new things, but
You
it
can do
also is
anything.
quite miserable at the same time.
Yeah.
But look at a stand-up comedian. You know, if you ever been to an
Oh.
open mic,
Mm-hmm.
if you've ever been to an open mic, it is the most miserable experience on earth as someone who used to do it. But what you're also witnessing is people who are workshopping on the lowest level things that have yet to see the light of day. And it's so raw and so awful. It's such a unique experience because of
Wow.
that. The most
Yeah.
vulnerable thing you could possibly do.
I mean, if you really think about that, it's like you can make something out of nothing with fearful attachment because you had to start with those raw materials as a kid. You had barely anything to meet your attachment needs. And so you had to find some way to make it bigger. And then you see that with comedy all the time, right? It's like there can be a random weird object in the room that is not even worth mentioning, but you can bring life to it somehow, you know?
Mhm.
And that's super cool. But it just goes to show the story of like how you've had to operate since day one.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think like when I think about fearful attachment, I'm gonna take a gamble here. I don't know where if this analogy is gonna work or not, but like if you picture like human beings are like mountains, and you know there's tall mountains way in the sky, there's medium-sized mountains, and there's lower mountains. People with fearful attachment, they're like these mountains that are like lower to the ground, and the whole society is sort of covered with this fake water, right? This water that's sort of covering all the mountains. The fearfully attached people are so low that the water is above them. So they're drowning in a sense and experiencing negative consequences as a result of this fluff, this water. But the people who are sort of born into these other spaces, they're above the water and it's still there. I almost get the feel that people with fearful attachment, they have been dealing with the consequences of fluff their whole life. And when reality actually strikes and the water's gone, they're like, this is great. But for other people that have always been above the water, they're fine with the fluff. They're like, it's not a big deal. But for I think fearfully attached people, the stakes are so high when it comes to fakeness and fluff that it feels good to be able to tear down every single myth or idea. And I see that a lot in stand-up comedy, right? Like they can say, oh, you thought the joke about like this was funny about like, I don't know, Barack Obama,
Mm-hmm.
but you draw the line when it comes to talking about this thing between male and female dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's showing the disparity in like how we think.
It's showing the inauthenticity of our own minds.
Yes.
And I think people with fearful attachment, inauthenticity is a reminder to them of the disconnect that they feel inside. And that's why inauthentic people to a fearfully attached person causes a visceral reaction of disgust, because it's this reminder of this fear that they have that this is just all there is in the world. That's why I don't exist in the world.
Wow. Dang. That gave me chills too. You should write a book on fearful attachment.
I mean, I barely remembered it until you mentioned it that episode. Because my dissertation was like just a little about attachment in a larger context. So I remember just like breezing through that part.
You got some good analogies there.
But
what about? Oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
you go.
What do you have any ideas about dating with fearful attachment? What advice maybe could we give people with fearful attachment who are dating?
Watch the kitten video. No, no. I mean, maybe watch the kitten video is one example. But I think, as long as you value the right things, dating a fearfully attached person can be a really nice experience because you're witnessing someone who is going to be authentic and raw, and maybe sometimes that might be a lot. But I think for most people, part of what creates disconnect in long-term relationships is this like inability to address what's happening in this moment. And someone who's fearfully attached is always ready to address what's happening in this moment.
Yeah, I wonder if that's also why in DBT one of the effective interventions is mindfulness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of people with fearful attachment that might be more dysregulated might not have the access to those tools like as fine-tuned as it could be. But yeah, that makes sense, right? You're in the present, you're raw. What about someone as, like, I guess my question, I'm glad you said that too, but the question would be.
But you didn't answer it.
But you didn't answer. I was asking more like, well, what if you have fearful attachment and you're trying to date someone? Like, what if you're trying to figure out how to date and you have fearful attachment and yet you are afraid and don't trust anybody?
That's a good question. I feel like the basic bitch answer is like be vulnerable, you know?
Yeah.
But it's like what keeps you from being vulnerable and fearful attachment is this. I mean, I think that you're gonna burn yourself out. If you're fearfully attached and you're trying to date, you're gonna burn yourself out if you begrudgingly try to live within the standards of expectations people put on dating. I think this is a playbook right out of my personality, but I think you have to be completely yourself from the moment you meet someone. I mean, I think the thing I hang my hat on most in my relationship is like when my wife met me to now, I'm exactly the same. And same with my clients. They're like you're exactly that. I'm like, if I ran into you at a Trader Joe's, you would get exactly the same guy, for better or for worse. But I think as long as you're exactly yourself, you allow the other person then to decide, okay, do I want this? But if you hide any parts of yourself because you begrudgingly think that's the only way you'll find someone, you're going to end up feeling really frustrated in a relationship where someone chooses not you, but, some form of you.
Yeah. I mean, I think about dating with like proactive sort of ideas too with fearful attachment, right? Like if you're someone with fearful attachment and you've experienced tons of invalidation over and over and over again, and then you're going out into the field of dating, then you might have some stuff built in and trained into you that might respond negatively to more neutral stimuli. But if you go in authentic all the way every time, that could be positive too, because now you're giving people the chance to connect with you, even if you're more dysregulated or not. If you're someone with fearful attachment and you're kind of been working on yourself, building skills, and then you're dating, I imagine that authentic approach would work with the right people. But I also wonder if with fearful attachment, you might end up ruling out a lot of insecure people really quickly, Like I wonder if that's also a part of it, because with other attachment styles and then secure attachment, you can be in a relationship with people and they don't necessarily need to also they can be more insecure in their attachment. You can end up together and it works out. But with fearful attachment, I wonder if it's more so that you have this this ability to filter people out more quickly if they don't match your security, because there's no fluff. It's all authenticity.
Mm-hmm. But I do hear what you're saying though. A fearfully attached person is going to be more rejection sensitive, and they may give up on someone that could be a good option because that person might be hard to read. And a fearfully attached person is, a fearfully attached person is voraciously trying to get to the truth. Even when the truth is something that needs its own time to unfold, what the experience of someone is on a first date might not necessarily be the experience of them in a long-term relationship. Like there's this classic line from 30 Rock where Liz Lemon is like, I wish we could just skip to the like 3 months into dating where we're watching Netflix together on a couch, because that's kind of the more representative version of what you are as a person. The problem is if you're fearfully attached and you're feeling this inauthentic vibe from the outset, but they're not inauthentic, they're just uncomfortable or whatever. Like if you are patient and wait, you might get to a place where you really get to know the real person, and they're not inauthentic people. They're just anxious, or, dating's weird. But if you don't give them a chance to get to a place of comfort, you'll never know if you actually like the real person or not.
Yeah, I agree. That makes sense. Because if you're fearfully attached and you're dating and you see someone that's inauthentic, that's going to remind you of the same force that probably hurt you in childhood, that wasn't direct and authentic with your needs. And so disconnecting that from the person in front of you might be a huge part in knowing that this person that I'm with might not be perfectly authentic. They're holding on to things that have kept them safe in life that I didn't get to hold on to as a kid. But maybe I can sit through that and wait, even though I have to understand this person maybe had more privilege in that area than I did. And that privilege is keeping them from this authentic, beautiful thing that I now have, you know?
And also, I think someone with fearful attachment feels so alienated that they might think they need to find someone as unique as them, unique in the way that they're unique. And I would argue, going back to the last episode, it's like, stop overcomplicating what can be a simple procedure of zooming out, going, do I like this experience or not? And letting that be the compass of your behavior rather than this hyper analytical, like, view of, well, are they like this, or are they authentic enough? It's like, do you like the experience of being around them?
Yeah. Yep. Rather than also keeping score, right? Like, I feel like fearfully attached people more likely run into a strikeout rate when it comes to relationships of like, oh, this one didn't work, this one didn't work, this one didn't work, rather than just ignoring the scoreboard, because the reason that you might not be successful with a lot of people that you're interacting with is because it's more difficult for people to see through the assumptions of society, because there is a negative part of society, and you represent the authentic part that they hopefully can get to one day. Even though if you're a dysregulated someone with fearful attachment, maybe you need to do some work too, but I think that it's accepting that you might be more rejected than the next person, but not just for bad reasons. And so if you can accept that you'll be rejected for the wrong reason sometimes, you don't align with the perpetrator and invalidate yourself, there's more emotion acceptance, and then the people that you enjoy being around will be the people you enjoy being around. And it doesn't say something about your self-worth.
No.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be so complicated, like, and I think in some ways someone who's fearfully attached can get so in their head that everything about a fearfully attached person's life is like this begrudging, oh my God, I have to deal with this. When I would challenge, like, do you have to deal with this? Do you have to deal with your analytical mind, or can you just put it on a shelf for a second and ask yourself, is this a nice experience or not? Like things that feel inevitable don't have to be inevitable if you simplify your life and not make relationships more complicated than they have to be. Because the truth is a good relationship is good not because of all the things you can explain about it, but just because how effortless it is.
Yeah, yeah, because I could easily see it's like, oh, this relationship, if they're not on the same page with me perfectly, right? Like if they don't understand me now, it's not like the ADHD thing where it's like this dopamine hit, but it's more of like this, if they don't get on the same page as me, I'm going to be invalidated. I'm going to be trampled by this person that's privileged and doesn't get it. Versus, and so in that space though, if you can challenge that and realize like, I don't necessarily need to be on the same page for safety and familiarity. I can exist next to this person, and there's going to be some connection there. And if I'm with someone and I spend a lot of time with them, maybe we start getting more on the same page over time, but it's okay to have more distant relationships with people that I connect with, because if you don't spend enough time with them, it's a losing battle to get on the same page sometimes, and that's okay maybe.
Learn to sit with it. It's a classic case of AONBS. You know what that is, obviously? Of course you do.
Of course. Obviously not.
Anxiety of not being seen. I just thought of it right now. It's this anxiety of not being seen, and that anxiety of not being seen is something that you don't have to make the world problem. It could just be something you sit with and not something you solve. But anyway, we're up against the clock. So
Wow.
so let's just make a plea to please subscribe,
Yeah,
join our Patreon if you want to support us.
that's right. Keep
And,
us going. Make us excited to keep doing all this stuff, even though it's just part of doing this is fun in and of itself.
It
but
is fun in itself.
yeah,
But we'll see you guys next time.
next time. Peace out.